It's Thursday, March 16th. This is an end of the day SPY recap, and today on the daily chart, you can see we end up with a big green two up bar that, if you just look at it on its own, it stayed above essentially the midpoint of the prior day, opened near the low of the day, big green bar, closed near the high of the day. Once it had a two up day, we had targets up here to this pivot, which was very close to this pivot, reached that, extended a little further, kind of into this fair value gap, which I'll get into in a minute. So right now, this is very close to really changing the entire bigger picture bias. I'm not ready to proclaim a bias change quite yet, but you can see all the components that are getting ready to do so. In other words, we have the two, this is now the fourth day in a row that we're green in the week. We never, after Monday, we never got below the open of the week. So even though, we had the big red bar, we tested the lows, but right from the get-go, we've kind of just been above that open all week. So there's had a little bit of an up bias short term, even though we've had the monthly chart with a two down with a potential down target here, if a reversal would occur. So that was kind of the conflict that's been in play all week, short term up, bigger picture down. And now all of a sudden, as we come to the fourth day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you can almost envision no matter what happens tomorrow, we probably should follow through a little higher tomorrow on the daily chart just to test those highs. And even if we just have a pause type of day, this should end up a pretty big green bar, which means you should expect follow through next week to the upside. And once that happens, if that happens, you have essentially an actionable signal on the buy side now on the weekly chart. I've always been waiting ever since the breakdown here of these two bars for a weekly upward signal to start even thinking about the long side again. And if we get a 3 bar here, the red bar down, outside bar followed by a 2 down, 2 up, then that's an actionable signal to start going to this magnitude up here. At that point, let's say we get a 2 up, into next week, and that's an actionable signal. We have that target. If we look at that, that's right up here on the monthly chart. All of a sudden, this monthly chart is start with 1 week to go, assuming we take all week to get there. That becomes looking like a hammer bar, which then should project higher into the next month, which then starts working up to here, and maybe back all the way up to a lot of these monthly targets over the last year and a half or so. So, this is an interesting moment. Now, the only thing is, if we really look at it, could this be just a big green day up? You could see here, it just filled this fair value gap. This is like you can just look on the chart, this whole megaphone. This little area here was the fair value gap, and that's where we got up to. Yesterday, we kind of took out internal liquidity at the very end of the day. There was this little pivot here, and we closed up kind of, we took that out. We couldn't get lower. We made a higher high. But if you look at the bigger picture, all this could be maybe is taking out this liquidity into this gap, and maybe we're still going to roll to the downside, even though that's not really the strongest, outlook at the moment. It's still possible that that's all this was, kind of like we've discussed in the past. We've had moments where we've come down like this, down, boom, 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 take out the highs and then continue lower. Here, we're just taking out a high, and we're at a key moment here that we really want to see how Friday ends. I mean, we're going to expect up, but maybe we'll get some kind of failure that'll come to the midway point of that bar. Maybe we gap down tomorrow. I don't know. The odds, it's possible we head up strongly and go all the way to that pivot, and then almost for sure you're going to get a strong follow through into next week, and the whole thing can change. So I would say we're very close to changing the bias to the upside, but we're right at that moment here where we're just going to have to let price action lead the way. So getting to that price action leading the way concept, that's what today was all about. And I shot a midday update video that really, even though we were gapping, we were kind of starting lower near the lower half of the pre-market range between the blue lines, and maybe expecting a little two down continuation day. Right out of the gates, the market opened up. It just kind of paused to the halfway point of that first bar, essentially, then started up again, and that was your buy signal. That then took you had a target. You could see here kind of to this pivot and to the intraday high. Anytime you get an internal buy signal inside the range, you kind of target the pre-market range high or low first, got there, and then it just exploded right through. At that point, we were in a 2-up condition, which gave you targets up here, and it wasn't surprising to reach that green line. Then there was just a pause. You always look for failures or continuation here. This type of price action is just continuation, and then we moved up for the rest of the day. So that was today's price action. If you're following it, just trading the SPY, it was only to the long side you should have went, and there were plenty of opportunities to get it long here, and then I guess you can almost say it as one push up, pause, two pushes up. It was kind of that, and it was one of the rare trend days where you actually get a third push up. So very strong day, closed green. So now let's just see how I'm going to see what really happens tomorrow. Only a major failure to me could start maybe turning this weekly chart. If we get something big to the downside to weaken the look of this bar, other than that, you're kind of expecting all the other conditions to take place to maybe change our bias. So let's see how things go tomorrow and end the week. But today, an interesting day where we gapped lower just to the midpoint of the prior day, but immediately went up. So let's just see how things go tomorrow. And we're getting closer now on that monthly chart to kind of failing on that 2 down to reach its targets. I mean, even though those look very clear, but we still have 2 weeks to go. So let's just really see what unfolds. But I think this weekly chart and whatever follow through you get into next week or not could be the answer to really what happens for the rest of the month.